As usual, I don't record already. Hi guys, welcome to Afrovision TV. I remain your favorite host, Chuku Edo. Um, if you're a new viewer, you're a new subscriber, hey, thank you so much for dropping by today. And if you're a returning subscriber, you already know you guys are the MVPs. I keep saying that. So, as I always do my special greeting, if you be new subscriber or viewer, take it, take it. And then if you are a returning subscriber, take it, take it, take it, take it, take it. Okay, that's just on the lighter mood. Yeah, so once again, as I mentioned, I remain your host, Chukwuedo. And so I have, a very important, am I going to say, topic that I just wanted to, quickly share my perspective on. It's actually about a post I saw on Instagram about some guy. I think he's in the US or in the UK, I think, or maybe even Canada. I think a Nigerian of Yoruba origin who was basically pointing out how dumb, would I say, or how stupid it is, or how much of a financial mistake it is to actually build back home in Africa while you are actually living in the West. So I saw a whole lot of comments. It was a very, very interesting post, which generated a lot of reactions and comments as well. I want to believe it was not clickbait. So haven't seen the comments, gone through them very, very thoroughly. I just thought it necessary to actually share my 2 cents on this particular topic. And of course, as I do with every other topic, I like to prepare, do some, background work, do a little bit of research here and there before I give my opinion. So, of course, I have my paper right here with some points that I noted down, which I think are very, very important for anybody who wants to make this decision. And of course, my usual disclaimer, I am a Pan-Africanist, which means, for me, Africa is the home for all Africans. Whether you're from Cuba, whether you are from the US, whether you are from Brazil, etc., etc. Africa is that place that is always going to receive you. And hey, this is not to say that I am oblivious of the problems or challenges or difficulties in Africa, but what I mean is, there's just this peace, there is this closeness to nature, there is this calm, that you experience whenever you are in the motherland. Hey, as I mentioned, this is not it's not a clarion call, for everybody to, leave wherever it is that they are and then go to Africa, and settle and stuff like that. I mean, if that happens, it will be great. But hey, I acknowledge the fact that many people of African origin or of African descent have made their decisions, out of personal experiences, of course, and we cannot invalidate these experiences. Maybe somebody's loved one got kidnapped and things like that, and then eventually you decided to relocate to the West, and you've sworn never to go back to Africa again. Hey, different strokes for different folks. We totally understand that your decision is very, very peculiar, based on your personal experiences. And perhaps I would say, this video is not necessarily targeted to people like you, or of course any other person who has decided that, hey, I don't care, I don't want to go back to Africa, I just wanted to remain in the West. So I assume that this video is perhaps not the most ideal for people like you, but I'm talking about people who have been in the diaspora for a very long time, Africans who are perhaps contemplating, they are at that point now where a lot of things they see on the media actually influences their decision to whether build a home in Africa or just remain in the West, pay the deposit or the upfront, as you guys call it, like a down payment, for a mortgage in the West, and then, spend 20, 25, 30 years actually trying to pay that off. So I am going to mention some bullet points that I will discuss that I think are very, very important for Africans to consider before they make that decision. And personally, I am for it. I am for it 100%. If you can, build a house in Africa. But hey, this is not about my personal opinion. I have to make reference to some of the points that I actually have. So without further ado, I'm just going to go straight into it. So the topic is building back home in Africa while living abroad. Does it make sense? So the first point that I wanted to mention would be, first of all, it's going to be determined by how old you were when you made the move to go to the diaspora. So this already takes for granted the fact that I'm not talking about those who were born in the diaspora. Of course, this topic applies to them, but in a different way. I'm talking about Africans who leave Africa and then relocate, to the West or anywhere outside of the motherland. So I think the first thing to consider would be how old you were when you left, because I assume that most people who live in the later years of their life, perhaps they already have something on ground, so this might not necessarily apply so much to you. But I'm talking about those folks who maybe they left in their early 20s, late 20s, early 30s, who still have some good 25, 30 years of, active life, who they can walk and things like that. So I think it goes a long way to consider how old you were when you left. So if, for example, you left when you were 20, 22, 23, 24, 25, hey, I'm very sure that this is something that you can do very, very conveniently. What do I mean? If you work for 5 years, you work for 6 years, whatever monies you gather, you can always use that, to build a home back in Africa. And I think there is something I must clear up here. First of all, when we say building a home in Africa, we're not necessarily talking about luxury, because I think this is one of the sources of conflict in terms of these particular arguments, because I think a lot of people are fixated so much on building like a luxury home, very, very expensive, maintenance costs very high, etc. I'm talking about having a piece of land in a place that is already being inhabited by people, where you have neighbors, you have, basically you have a community. This is what I'm talking about. You have a home. It could be a 2-bedroom, it could be a 3-bedroom, it could even be a mini flat, which is a room, the bedroom, the living room, the kitchen, toilet, and everything. So this is my perspective when I actually talk about this. So I'm saying, if you left when you were very young, chances are you should be able to conveniently build something back home, before you get to, the later part of your life, which of course, within 5 years, 6 years, you should be able to complete that. And then whatever monies you get, you can still, get a mortgage in the West, because I think that's a very good investment. I am not going to overlook that. If you're able to do both, fantastic, but if you are not able to do both, and then that you are young, you might decide to prioritize, hey, do I want to do the mortgage first in Europe, or do I want to build a home back in Africa? So I think this is the first point to actually consider. If you're very young, then I think largely you should actually be able to do both. Now it is left to you to determine, what do you want to focus on first, building the home in Africa first, or doing the mortgage. But obviously, as we know, for you to do the mortgage, especially if you're not a citizen of the country where you actually reside, it's actually more expensive. What I mean by that is the down payment is going to be a little bit more expensive, so it might take you a little bit more time for you to actually gather this money. So I think this is the first point to actually consider. Now, the second point is here. Yes, so the second point is this. Do you plan to retire back in Africa? If yes, then I think it is absolutely important for you to have a home in Africa. Not everybody is privileged to come from a very rich home. Let me just put it like that. A lot of people in the diaspora, yes, you have rich people amongst them, but hey, a lot of them didn't have much going going for them back home. This is a statement of fact, because most of the people who are rich, who are wealthy, you realize that most times they don't really care too much about living in the diaspora. They come, they do whatever they want, and then they go back. If we are going to keep it 1,000, it's usually the case. People who are really well to do. I'm talking about really well to do. Like big names. They don't come and just sit in the diaspora. It's usually am I going to say middle class, low, etc., etc. These are the people who, of course, see diaspora as an opportunity to basically compensate, for the lack of, let's say, earning power. I'm going to say, especially back home in Africa, because this is not limited to Nigeria, as a matter of fact. But of course, hey, you still have some rich people who are in the diaspora living here for reasons best known to them. Maybe security issues. And yes, so the second point is, do you plan to retire back home? This is the case for many Africans in the diaspora. We run from our countries to come to the diaspora. At the beginning, first 2 years, it's all nice, getting used to a new place. You're going to the beach. If you are, let's say, in Spain, Portugal, Brazil, places like that, or even Florida, Miami, very nice beaches. You're enjoying this newfound country. But as time goes on, 5 years, 6 years, 7, 8, 9 years, 10 years, you are now used to the system. Let's say you're working, and who knows, maybe you're in a good salary bracket. What it means is that, the higher your salary, the higher the tax. So the scales begin to fall off your eyes very quickly that, hey, this system is somehow rigged, I know you have a lot of Africans who would say, oh, no, you can earn a whole lot of money in the diaspora. I've been in the diaspora for almost 7 years now. So I know how the system works. The higher you earn, the higher the tax. So in order for you to keep, let's say, if you're going to get like 50,000 net, then it means that your salary scale should be maybe around 90, 95,000 or 100,000. So when you look at this, you see the discrepancy between what you actually earned and what you actually have like in your bank account. Then you realize very quickly that, wait a minute, this is actually a whole lot of money that is being kept. Because whether you like it or not, I keep saying this, the West is not really designed to make millionaires, as a matter of fact, except if you have a business. Most likely, maybe you're in sales, then maybe you could just, earn those millions. But if you like a 9-to-5, the tax is already a very, very big deal, and let's keep it 100. A lot of Africans, if you check the stats, are not really in that category of high earners. Of course, I know you're going to see a lot of comments of especially Nigerians. Sometimes we don't actually listen to digest or understand. We just listen because we want to respond. Check the stats almost everywhere, even in the so-called technology space. The Indians, the Indians are up there. The Filipinos. Yes, a few Africans here and there, but hey, you have the Indians like up there. These guys are earning, like a whole lot of money. So my point here is, for those who plan to retire back home in Africa, especially after you've come to the realization that, hey, the system is, it's like this. You wake up, you go to work, you make money, you get taxed, and whatever is left, for you to keep, you have to make the best out of it. Some of us get to a point where we're just done with that life psychologically. And you deserve to at least go back to Africa and live in a place that you can call home that is actually yours. Again, I'm not talking about a luxurious house. If you can afford that, that's totally fine. But I'm talking about you deserve to go back to a community where you have peace, where you can wake up in the morning and you do not have to think about the stress of, having to catch the bus, catch the train, Yes, you have all this transportation, but hey, when you do that for 10 years, you'll understand what I'm actually talking. Even if you do that for 5 years, you understand what I'm talking about. It's always nicer in your first 2 years once you just arrive, the diaspora. But for those who have stayed in the West, at least for 5 years, I'm sure they understand what I'm actually talking about better. So if you plan to retire back home in Africa, then this is a no-brainer. This is non-negotiable, as a matter of fact. You should consider having a home somewhere in Africa. It could be in Nigeria, it could be in Ghana. And as a matter of fact, I as a Pan-Africanist, I do not share the opinion that it has to be in your home country. What do I mean by that? I'm Nigerian, for example. If for any reason, I'm really mad at Nigeria and the way things are run in that country, what is stopping me from actually having a house in the Republic of Benin, which is just a neighboring country? Nothing. We are all Africans, as a matter of fact, because it is easier for me to actually, breeze into the Republic of Benin, stay for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and if I need to come see like my siblings or my family, stuff like that, I can always come into Nigeria. This for me is the concept of Ubuntu, basically. We do not restrict ourselves to say, well, this is for me. I'm just going to stay in my confined space. You should explore Africa, because only by so doing can we actually, realize, the full potential of this communal life, that we actually grew up with, for a lot of us. We admire Europe. You come to, let's say, Spain. From Spain, you can just drive to France, Germany and the Netherlands and stuff like that. But in Africa, we do not practice the same thing. Yet we keep saying, oh, we want, a one and united Africa. Meanwhile, in our daily lives, we do not actually practice these things. So nothing stops you if you do not want to go back to Nigeria, and you're like, oh, I'd rather die in the West. Nothing stops you from getting a house in the Republic of Benin. Nothing stops you from getting a house in Ghana. Like, this is in Africa, and it's, the cultures are similar. The amount of peace you experience in Nigeria, typically you could actually experience it in Ghana. I'm talking from experience, at least. At least I've been to Ghana, I've been to Togo, I've been to the Republic of Benin. And these are places that I absolutely love and recommend. So if you plan to retire back home, please understand that this is a no-brainer for you. I have the third point here. Let's see. Okay, and this is the most important point, as a matter of fact. You have to ask yourself, how convenient would it be if you embark on that project? This is what I mean. A lot of people, I think even the people who, that post that the guy made on Instagram, talking about, hey, it's foolish to build back home, especially when you're living in the diaspora. I think that message was targeted to the third set of people that I want to talk about. You have a lot of people who use their life savings. What I mean by that is, this is everything that you have, like home and away, and then they use that money to actually build houses back in Africa. And then what happens? It affects your life negatively, because I think this is really important. I think a lot of people make this mistake where they subject themselves to a very high level of inconvenience, to the extent that it affects, their lives. Like, they cannot even feed well, they cannot even buy enough groceries, they don't have enough money to spare for their loved ones and things like that. So I think there should always be a balance. I think this is a very important aspect about this discussion. Building a house, except if you already have the money like stacked up in the bank, and of course you have a little bit of extra for you to stay afloat while you're actually building the house. If not, see it as a marathon and not a sprint. After all, it's not like you're going to live in the house you're about to build in Africa in the next 1 year or 2 years. So if you know that you're not a very high earner, you don't have a very huge chunk of money saved up in your bank account, then you have to be sincere with yourself and not subject yourself to a very difficult financial condition just because you want to build a house in Africa. So the point here is, try to find the balance in order for you to execute the project conveniently. So I think these are the examples that we see a lot of times that, makes people say, oh, this is stupid, because you see the person suffering, you know, um, basically having a very, very low quality of life. And then when you approach them, they tell you, oh, I'm building a house in Africa. I think this is something that we actually need to address as Africans. See it as a marathon. Give yourself, a timeline. Oh, I want to do this within the next 5 years. And every year I want to commit, let's say, $2,000 or $3,000, to this project. Whatever $3,000 can do, then you pause and then you leave it on to the next year. So that way, if you have kids, if you have a family in the diaspora, you can take care of your family. Of course, you might have to do a little bit of cut here and there, but this is something that you have to carry your family along. And then at the end of the day, you would see that this is convenient for you. You are happy with yourself. You feel fulfilled because that is moving, but it's not actually affecting your family in the diaspora. So this is a very, very important aspect that I think a lot of people leave out. Do not subject yourself to any inconvenience just because you're building a house in Africa. Do not rush it, especially if you know that you do not have the financial strength, to actually do that. Then, as a bonus point, the post I saw on Instagram about this topic mentioned something very, very interesting. I even saw in the comments, they say, how can you take Forex like dollars, pounds, euros? How can you take dollars back home to Africa and then build a house, and then you expect that the monies that you're getting as rent or something from that house is actually going to fund you in Europe? I think that has to be like the most asinine thing that I've actually heard, because we know by default, for anybody who has even the slightest bit of financial literacy, automatically that anybody who is capable enough to take money to Africa to actually build a house and say, hey, I want to do this for commercial purposes, would not be depending on that house solely and then be living in Europe. This makes no sense. Like, this actually makes no sense. What do I mean? I've been in Europe, for example, gathered some money, and then I'm going to take, let's say, for example, 30,000 euros. Let me just put that and say, okay, let's say I want to build a one-story building. I take that money to Africa, and then I build a one-story building. Then I come back here, and I sit down in a rented house, paying rent, paying bills, and then I expect that the money that I'm getting from putting tenants or whatever, if you have like a hotel, from Africa is actually going to fund that. I think there's something fundamentally wrong with that thinking. So even the person who was saying that on Instagram, I'm not very sure how much of financial intelligence or literacy that they actually have, because you do not do that. So this is my point. This is why I said you have to look at various factors. This is a retirement home for me, or look, I'm doing this thing in Africa because whatever monies I'm getting from there, I can use that to sort out the problems that I have in Africa. For example, people have, let's say, how am I going to put it, like humanitarian or, charitable things that they actually do. For example, you have loved ones. Let's say you are paying somebody's school fees. Let's say you're always buying medications for some people back home. Let's say you have siblings, who do not, who are not necessarily well-to-do, and you just want to support them. Now, if you have a good chunk of money, you take the money back home, you build a house, and let's say, oh, you are generous enough, and you say, hey, I have two siblings. Hey, I want to give you guys this mini flat and the other mini flat. Let's say you have two mini flats. I'm talking about like a room, a living room, and toilet and kitchen. Now, if you put them in those apartments, and let's say you have a 3-bedroom for yourself, all in the same place. Now, what that has done for you is, first of all, I think for people who don't understand real estate, what is most valuable is the land. That is always going to appreciate. It is always going to appreciate. So the structure you put on it is not so much what gives the value to the property that you have. It is the land, and of course the level of development around the location where you actually bought the land. You can ask any realtor that you actually know. So if, for example, you buy the land in, in a place that is actually quite developed, with good access road networks, good drainage and stuff like that. That already is a very, very good investment. And then, because you, for reasons best known to you, you want to help your, siblings or your mom, who is aged, you build a structure on it and you say, hey, mom, I want you to stay in this place, and then the other parts of the house, I want to rent it out. You are not doing this with the intention to actually live off what is coming from Africa to pay your bills in Europe or in America. This makes no sense. And I'm very sure that a lot of people who do this understand what I'm talking about. But some people on social media, they, I don't know if I'm going to say for clout, or, they just want to sound like they're making sense, because I know that economics doesn't make sense, and nobody does that. Because the fact that you're actually still coming back to Europe or to America or to Australia or Canada to stay, it means that, one, you are a resident. What I mean by that is you're living there legally, which means you can work. So it makes no sense to take all that money to Africa, put it in a landed property, you build the house, and then what happens? You come back to Europe to live. You might as well just stay in Africa and live the best of your life, especially if you've gathered, something like 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. After building, you can comfortably live in Africa, enjoy yourself, have a nice car. You don't need to have many cars. This is another problem amongst the diasporans. We live very comfortably in Europe and, in the West generally. What I mean by that is you have a small car, maybe 5,000, 7,000, and then you go to Africa and you want to have 3, 4, 5 cars. This makes no sense. And I think this puts a lot of people under intense financial pressure. So my point here is this. You have to consider that whatever investment you're going to do in Africa, I'm talking about, like a property in the first place, you cannot live off the proceeds that come from it. But let's say, for example, you put that money, you build the house, and you put it out for rent. Now, when the rent get paid to you, if, for example, you want to, buy a farm or something, from that proceed, you can buy a farm, planning for your retirement. Because remember, I said this is a marathon. So if you still have some active years to work in the West, then you begin to plan for other kind of businesses that you want to do when you eventually retire in Africa. Then, from the proceeds that come out, if you want to, hey, give a little support to this brother here, to this sister here, to your mom, your mom's sister and stuff like that, it is very, very convenient when whatever monies you're getting from the proceeds of your investments in the property, you can actually use that to sort out, problems coming from home. This is very, very convenient, as opposed to taking your hard-earned forex again to start sending back home. So I think these are some of the very, very important factors to actually consider. I don't want to make this video too long, but I just wanted to share my perspective on this, because I think there is a huge misconception. A lot of people are stuck on videos like that to actually make the decision to not to, go back home and then build, something for themselves. I'm not talking about somebody who wants to go back home and start like a whole estate. I'm not talking about those people. This video is not for you. I'm talking about somebody who just wants to have a piece of earth somewhere in Africa where they can go back and say, hey, this is my house. This is my place of peace. I think it is a very, very good decision. However, I've pointed out the points for you to consider. How old you were, how many years of active life do you have to actually work, how convenient is it for you, and of course, if you are actually considering to retire back home. So I think these points are really, really important for you to consider. And then, of course, whatever results you get when you analyze these points, I'm hoping that it's going to help you make the best decision. Hey, have you built back home in Africa? How was the experience? Was it worth it? Was it not worth it? I think it would be nice to actually hear from you guys. So please put in the comments below if you've actually made this decision, or if you are actually at a point where you want to make this decision. Let us know how it went, or are you currently building in Africa at the moment? Please, you can put your comments down below. And yeah, I think that's all for now. Thank you so much for stopping by today. And hey, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, because what it does is that it helps us get a little bit of traction, and the videos can be shown to other people. And of course, they can learn from some of the issues that I actually discuss on the channel from time to time. So thank you guys, and that's me done. I'll catch you on the very next one. Thank you.